You ever trained so hard you thought you were making progress, but ended up injured instead? That was me, and it's still most fighters I meet today. Welcome to the Black Line Blueprint, the podcast where we cut through the noise and help fighters train smart, recover better, and show up strong both physically and mentally. I'm Coach Frederick, and today we're diving into a topic that separates fighters who grow year after year from the ones who stay stuck, training with the system, not emotion. Too many fighters are still training based on emotion, how they feel, what they saw online, or whatever seemed hard that day. But growth doesn't come from guessing. It comes from progression. In this episode, I'll break down what training inside a system actually looks like, why effort alone isn't enough, and how to stop letting your emotions run your workouts. As always, I'll be looking down at my notes. So if you're watching this video podcast, then you'll see me glancing down from time to time. And if you're listening to it, there may be some pauses, but I'm just collecting my thoughts and making sure that I stay on track and I don't end up rambling off, even though I still may do that. So let's dive right into it. The first point I want to make is consistency is not the same as intentional progression. So you can be consistent inside of the gym. You can be going in day after day, doing your workout after workout. But if you're one day you're doing a lot of high repetitions, and then the next day you feel like you want to max out, and then the day after that you feel like you want to just do some prehab work, and you're only going based off of feel and what you feel like doing that day, there is no rhyme or reason. So you really can't track your progress. So you don't know whether or not you're getting better. You just go off like, this session didn't feel that great. I'm going to do some more conditioning. Or, I gassed out during my last skill session. So I'm going to start doing more bike intervals. And then you come to find out like you start to gas out even more. So having intention behind it is, for instance, how I train my athletes is that we do certain blocks. So accumulation block to where we're building more resilience, injury resilience. We're building muscle endurance in that. We're reducing imbalances that we have, or major imbalances, working on mobility. And then the next phase, we may go into more max strength phase. And then the next phase after that, we may go into peaking power. And then it also just depends on the specific person that's in front of me as well. But we have intent behind what we're doing, the progression that we're doing. So you have to keep in mind intentional progression whenever you're thinking about the way that you want to train when it comes to your strength conditioning specifically. And one of the biggest things that I see is people just being reactionary. And it ties into the last point. So because you see somebody else working hard, or you just saw somebody else's training montage online, you're like, oh, I'm not doing enough. I need to work a lot harder than what I'm working right now. So the next day you get into the gym, and now you do your skill session, and then you go and you do some strength work. And then after that, you do another skill session, and then you go and do some more conditioning work or some road work. And then the next day you're completely beat and your skill session isn't going as good as you thought it should go. So you're just like, oh, I need to stack more conditioning on top of that. But in reality, your body's just over fatigued. So that reaction leads to a downward spiral that, leads to nowhere, basically leads to burnout, overuse, injuries. And I've seen it so many different times in a lot of the fighters that I've worked with, and then just fighters that have been around me that just feel like they need to just work harder, and that's going to solve all of their problems. Or just based off of your last performance. So if it was a fight that you didn't do so well in, and it's funny because I see so many people think that the conditioning is the biggest thing that gets me, that you pace yourself in a fight a lot of times. Like you see people pacing themselves, and for some apparent reason, people think conditioning is the end all be all. And it's just like, no, how you fight is another, reason why conditioning has to be structured and intentional behind it. Or if you just thought on your last performance, oh, I didn't win my fight, basically, and then you just jump to, okay, I need to just do something more. Like I just need to do more strength work. So you do strength training. Now, instead of doing it 3 times a week, you're doing it 5 days a week. Or you need to do more conditioning work for your leg endurance. And you're just like, okay, my legs felt a little fatigued. I need to do way more of that. But it could have been that you felt fatigue from the grappling exchanges. You haven't had that much experience with grappling exchanges. The biggest thing is the people who don't have that much experience in the sport yet, feeling like they need to do things outside of sport specific training more to increase that. Now, mind you, the people that come in with a really good solid base of athleticism, such as like they got really good muscle endurance, they got really good cardiovascular endurance, yes, they have a larger base of athleticism to pull from, but that doesn't mean that they're still not going to get fatigued in these positions that they're not experienced in. So if an athlete comes in and then they get into some grappling exchanges, they have to learn how to breathe through those movements. They have to learn how to like grapple appropriately. They have to learn how to adjust dynamic core stability. Like all those things play a factor into like how much fatigue will build up. Your body is going to adapt to what it is exposed to. So if you expose yourself to more grappling exchanges in training, then you can resist that fatigue a lot better than if you were just like, okay, I'm going to do more bike sprint intervals or I'm going to do more row intervals. It's specificity that's the real key. But I won't dive into that too much but just remember, like, your last performance is not the key indicator of you need to just react and do more inside of your strength and conditioning work. And I know I'm saying a lot about like systems, progression, being intentional behind it. And it may seem like it's inflexible, but the systems allow for flexibility. It's just structured. It's not rigid. You get better tracking from it. You can track all your metrics a lot better because you're just like, okay, well, during my skill session, I felt my legs fatigue, and it was just like, okay, so the next training block, we're going to focus on leg muscle endurance. If you are, let's just say, already skilled in whatever was going on. And then we track later on down the line, okay, we improved your leg muscle endurance based on these numbers and how you increase the weight from week to week. Now, how do you feel in your skills training? Oh, I have noticed that my fatigue level is a lot lower now doing the same stuff that I was doing before. Okay, that worked. We can pretty much put that in the bag and be like, okay, this is the progression that we will need to do if we ever run into the same problem. But again, if you're just reactionary and you're all over the place and just, hammering yourself with volume right out the back, you can definitely end up, increasing the amount of fatigue, soreness, and, potentially overuse injury and having to step back from training. So you got to adjust it and approach it with proper progression when you're thinking about these things and the flexibility behind it. If we know that in this training block that we're doing muscle endurance work, but you start to feel a little bit more fatigued, it's just like, okay, well, that's fine. And we know that you're going to feel more fatigued. But if we're saying like, oh, we need to pick up the skills training, then we can lower the overall volume in that. So the fatigue's a little less. And maybe we just slowly transition, or we do less weeks in that training block, and then we go into another training block. Because let's just say you may have a fight camp coming up, or you get a fight on short notice, then we have to make adjustments. But we can make smart adjustments because we do have a structure behind it, instead of being like, oh, you're doing 1 week of high intensity volume training, then the next week you're doing a whole bunch of conditioning work, and then the next week you're doing heavy max out lifts. It has no rhyme or reason to it. And it doesn't allow you to be as flexible or really, once again, track what you're trying to improve. This is a long game. You need to be able to see the progression or where you're trying to get to down the line, and being able to like really fine tune like what we're trying to dial in on. So basically, if all right, one of your major weaknesses is leg strength, then we know like, okay, this is the progression that we're going to use to increase our leg strength. And then we'll focus in on something else later on down the line. And we're keeping tabs on all the other things and just maintaining those other qualities so that we're not creating another weakness behind it. That is the importance of structure, right? So it's just like if you were like training a new skill, like training a new combo or training a new punch, and you're just like, okay, but you still keep touches on the other things. That's the same thing with your strength and conditioning. I want you to really think about that, like how you approach your skill training. Think about that with the same thing with strength conditioning. Sorry, I'm kind of like losing my words here. A lot of S's. I have problems with my S's. You also need to respect training age. Training age is basically like how experienced you are with, resistance training. And it doesn't mean like your biological age determines that, because I know people who, in their 30s, they never even touched the weight room before. But, they made it as far as they have. Now, if they get into the weight room, it doesn't mean that okay, you're 30, so you should be doing like these explosive things. You're at this pro level. You need to be doing like, hurdle hops over like multiple hurdles or depth drops, um, all those fancy exercises or rotational med ball throws and stuff like that. That's a little lighter potentially, but if they don't know how to control their hip rotation, if they don't know how to control a landing yet, why would we jump straight into plyometrics just because we think that they're this age or they're at this level? That's not how it works. You have to make sure that you're doing a proper progression when it comes to that. So respect your training age. If you're new to the weight room, do the basics. Do basic movement patterns, squatting, bending, pulling and pushing, and some isolated core work. Get those foundations down. You don't need anything fancy. And it just trains your body to be able to be more efficient in those movement patterns. It trains your body to have strength through all those ranges instead of just jumping from thing to thing or jumping from what you believe you need to do. That's the most advanced exercise that's going to fast forward your progress in that area. Another big thing is just like readiness. So on a day-to-day basis, your energy is going to fluctuate. So you may have had like a really hard session the day before, and then you come in and you're pretty banged up, but you still have strength conditioning on your schedule. With that, make adjustments. If you go in and then you're not feeling too great, the smart thing to do is just push with what you have, right? So you're 100% that day, maybe 80% of your previous day. And that's perfectly fine because you're making adjustments for the long game, right? You're not really worried about like that specific day. You know that, okay, this one day isn't going to make or break my long-term goals. What me doing and making an adjustment is going to help that long-term goal. So adjusting the weight based on like how you're feeling that day, because now that next training day that you come in and you have your skills work, your skill session, if you go into that skill session now a lot fresher than you were the previous day because you decided to make adjustments, now you're making progress. But if you decided to hammer yourself that day, still just because you thought you needed to do more weight or push hard just because you're going based off of your emotions, you want to push hard every single day, then you go into your skill session and it's crap. So you need to make those adjustments based on like how you feel, your readiness. And one of the biggest things I always say to my fighters is about like just the life context around it, right? Like what's going on outside of the gym? Like, did you not get good sleep the night before? Are you heavily stressed based on whatever you got going on in your life from your significant other, your family member that you're taking care of, or a child, whatever it may be? Like there may be a financial stress. Like there's a lot of things that could be going on outside of that affects your performance inside of the gym. So if a lot of life is going on outside of the gym and it's piling up, you have to deal with those specific things, and you may need to adjust your training based on that. So that's one of the things I always ask them, like, what's going on? How much sleep are you getting? How did you eat the day before? What's stress look like? What's your life looking like right now? What's going on? Because it's okay to make adjustments. So that way you can, come out the other side, better than you did before. And then also teach them that like, hey, it's fine. Like it's not going to make or break like a year down the line or a couple of months down the line. It's going to be good for now. So that way you don't get an overuse injury because you decided to push through a lot more stress. So think about it like this, right? You have a stress bucket. And if you have some nutrition stress, some sleep stress, some life stress going on based on like relationships or whatnot, and then you have training stress from your skill work, but then you try and stack more stress and your bucket is already at the top and is full during that training stress, and you just like, you get a little tweak or something like that, and you're just like, oh, what happened there? It's just like, oh, I was doing the movement wrong, or oh, I shouldn't have went as heavy. It's just like, no, you stacked way too much stress on top of each other. You needed to make the adjustments, or you need to look at the grand picture and be like, okay, like how's my body responding to training this day? Like how am I feeling going into it? We have to be more intuitive and really think about like how our body's feeling during training sessions. So when we're getting into the gym and just like, okay, I feel really good today. I feel pretty mobile today. Weight's feeling good. All right, we push it. But if it's just like, nah, this feels off, like I don't feel as strong through my back, it's just like, all right, let's back off a little bit to not like tweak our back. That's fine. Because the main thing needs to be the main thing. Like strength conditioning is a really strong foundation, but we can back off and make sure that you're fresh for your skill session. And, you can still train hard, but that hard work needs to live inside of a plan that adjusts over time. So pushing with intent and structure, like I said before, like you're going hard during your workouts, don't get that wrong, but you're pushing with intention. It's not just for ego or because you saw somebody else lifting that same amount of weight, or your training partner in a totally different weight class is lifting way more weight than you. Just like really. Whenever I see like stuff like that going on, I just kind of like give the look. Like you should know the look when somebody's looking at you with disapproval. Yeah, like disapproval. Yeah, I can speak very well. Just to let you know. And then also like your body has a rhythm to it as well. So if we're all over the place, think about this, like your body prepares for the stress that it knows it's about to take on. So if the next few days you're about to have some hard sparring sessions, your body's ramping up and preparing for that stress that it's going to take during those sessions. So if it's all over the place, your training is all over the place, let's say your strength conditioning work, your body knows that, okay, this next day we're about to do this. And it has a rhythm throughout the day, like digestion, how that works along with your training as well. So it kills me when people don't want to, form structure around their training in order to be as effective as possible. Like that's one of the biggest things that you need, rhythm. Our body isn't just like this thing that we can just throw a whole bunch of stuff at and then, hope that good things come out on the other side. We have to have some type of structure down to it. And then, making smart adjustments. Like I said before, making adjustments to your training volume. If you feel pretty beat up that day, maybe you reduce the sets that you're doing. Instead of 3 sets, you do 2 sets. Instead of doing heavier loads than you did the previous week, maybe you do 10 pounds to 5 pounds lighter than you did the previous week. So it's just making those smart adjustments so that way you can continuously make progress. Like sometimes progress doesn't look like you adding more weight. It looks like you maintaining what you already have or already have built up to from the previous weeks. So getting to some like other common like problems is mistaking soreness or exhaustion for effectiveness. Now, this kind of mindset stems from what I see, like the bodybuilding world. A lot of people train to, get bigger muscles. And in order to get bigger muscles, they break down, they do a lot of training volume. So they feel sore and they feel like, okay, I destroyed my muscles. Now they should build up a lot stronger. But when it comes to performance training, when it comes to strength conditioning for performance in a specific sport, that is not the goal that we are trying to accomplish, because that is just going to interfere with your skill training. If you're sore for 3-4 days after your training, you are doing it wrong. I am not sorry about saying that. Like, you're doing it absolutely wrong, because that means you did way too much than your body was prepared for. If you're sore the next day, like that's okay, especially if you're entering a new training cycle. Like that's fine. Your body's trying to adapt to that stress you imposed on it. But if you're sore multiple days on end and it's interfering with your skill work, you're not keeping the main thing, and you're doing way too much volume, or you're doing way too many different exercises inconsistently. So you're doing, a new deadlift variation every other day, or a new squat variation every other day, just trying to vary it up and keeping it novel because you want to make it fun or whatever. But once again, you're not keeping the main thing. So novelty is one thing that can definitely make it to where your body's sore because you're trying to adapt to the stress. But the most of the time is people trying to train like bodybuilders, or fighters trying to train like bodybuilders, that makes them sore. And I mean, a simple example is one of the fighters that I train now. He basically told me that he was going based off of what he used to do and what he knew when it comes to lifting weights, just like bodybuilding. He did tries and buys, or back and buys, or chest and tries. he did that type of training. It was like 6 days a week and then just one day of power work or something like that. And he was always sore going into his skill session. His grip was burning out. His shoulders just felt heavily fatigued. And then I was just like, okay, let's have a talk. This is, you're training like a bodybuilder, and that's for the purpose of just building more muscle mass. What do you actually want to accomplish? Are you trying to train for performance? Okay, this is what it looks like based on how I train my fighters. Showed him, we got him on the program, and immediately within, I don't know, a couple of days, he was just like, man, I feel way better. Like my grip is, a lot better and stronger. I'm not shaking out my biceps. One of the other fighters was just like, oh, they shake out their biceps so much. And my shoulders don't feel as fatigued. I have more energy and I can do, other stuff outside of here. And then you have more time to do the other things. You have more time to meal prep. You have more time to organize your life outside of this. You have time that you can do film study. Like you have more time because you're actually focusing on the main thing, and you're making sure that those training sessions, those strength conditioning sessions, are structured and they're aimed at the goal of increasing your performance, basically. So, and then, just another mistake is like ignoring progress markers because the session didn't feel hard. Okay, so here's the thing. Like hard doesn't mean progress. Like that, it's as simple as that. Like just because it was hard doesn't mean that you're making progress, and just because it wasn't hard doesn't mean you're not making progress. So your body could just be adapting to the stimulus. Your body could be gaining more range of motion. The thing I would tell you to think about this is like, how do you feel in your skill sessions after doing a training session that doesn't necessarily feel hard? How do you feel during your skill session? Are you fresh now? Are you throwing punches that are more snappy? Do your kicks feel more fluid? Are your grappling exchanges, more dynamic? Are your takedowns more dynamic? Is your grip burning out less? Ask yourself all of those questions after a quote unquote non-hard training session. And then you'll know whether or not you're making progress, because that just shows that you're keeping the main thing, and it's not interfering with your skill work. So the next thing is like you're less beat up as well. Like you're going into your skill session less beat up. And if you're going into your skill session less beat up, you're just like, okay, cool. Like that, that doesn't interfere with what I'm trying to get done in my skill work. Less nagging injuries as well. So my perspective, and I'll just go over this quickly, is just the importance of phases. Like I said before, we work through phases in our training based on where you are currently. Accumulation phase is a phase that we'll go through to build up muscle endurance, to build the resilience of the body, to reduce the amount of overuse injuries. Intensification phase to build more strength, and then a realization phase, like a peaking phase, to build more explosive power if we're getting ready for a fight coming up. Now, it also depends on how much experience you have. Some people may be in accumulation and intensification for a while and maybe never even touch the peaking phase, because in general, like your sport specific training will be the training that actually gets you to that peaking phase. And you don't really need to touch on that too much. Just build the base foundation. And like I said before, I teach fighters how to auto-regulate. They, get in tune with their body and understand what their body actually needs that training day. So wrapping up here, I want you to think about this question here. So ask yourself, am I following a plan or just chasing a feeling? Am I following a plan or just chasing a feeling? The next question is, am I progressing with purpose or reacting based on emotion, insecurity, or ego? I want to leave you with this: is training without a system is just guessing, really. You're just throwing things at the wall and seeing if it sticks. If that's how you want to treat your career, by all means. But if you're here and you want to make sure that you have the best opportunity to succeed, we need to have a system. Like I said, you don't have to train like a robot. It doesn't have to be so rigid, but it does have to be structured and planned, and it is still flexible as well. So as always, I appreciate you being here. And if you felt like you got some benefit from this, send this over to somebody else that you believe can benefit from it. And I'll see you next time.